Hey everyone, welcome back to North of the Fray. My name is Tanya, and on this channel, I like to discuss narcissism from a biblical perspective. If you are new here, welcome to this community. I am so glad that you're here, and I want to thank you for sharing your time with me today. Before I start the discussion, I'd love for you guys to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss any future content. Your support helps to continue these important conversations and help to reach more people who need this type of encouragement. So, again, I thank you, thank you, thank you. Now, for today's topic. Today, I want to talk about emotional intelligence, the burden of emotional intelligence, which I believe that emotional intelligence is an incredible mix of wisdom, intuition, and discernment that God gives us to navigate life and relationships. But I want to go a little deeper and explore what happens when that emotional intelligence alerts us to someone who might be unsafe for us, someone who appears to have our best interest at heart, but they really don't. I'm going to share a story about a gentleman named Caleb. This gentleman learned the lesson of guarding his heart and looking out for his own best interest in a profound way through his recent experience. It's a story about learning to trust the quiet voice of God, even when it's hard, and finding the strength to guard your heart. And here's Caleb's story. Caleb was one of those people who had always felt deeply. He noticed things others didn't, the small shifts in someone's tone, the tension behind a laugh, or the way someone avoided eye contact when they were holding something back. As a child, people called him too sensitive. As an adult, he realized that sensitivity wasn't a flaw, it was a gift. Like any gift, emotional intelligence came with challenges. Caleb often felt like he saw too much, like he carried the weight of understanding things about people that they didn't even understand about themselves. It left him feeling isolated at times, even in a room full of people. His most recent experience with someone named Rebecca taught him just how heavy that gift could feel. When Caleb met Rebecca, it felt like the beginning of something he had long prayed for. She had this energy about her, charismatic and self assured in a way that made her stand out. Her confidence wasn't overbearing, it was magnetic. It was the kind that drew people to her effortlessly. Rebecca had a way of speaking that made Caleb feel seen, as if he were the only person in the room. She seemed genuinely interested in him, his thoughts, his passions, and even the little quirks that he usually kept hidden. Caleb, who was cautious by nature, found himself lowering his guard and allowing her in. For the first few weeks, everything felt perfect. Rebecca was attentive, thoughtful, and easy to talk to. She'd ask him questions about his goals and encourage him to dream big. Caleb felt a kind of excitement he hadn't felt in years. He thought to himself, maybe this is it. Maybe I finally found someone who understands me. But as time went on, subtle cracks began to show. They were small at first, things that were easy to overlook. Rebecca had a way of brushing aside Caleb's emotions when he tried to be vulnerable. Once, he shared a story about a difficult time in his life, hoping to open up and connect with her on a deeper level. Instead of responding with empathy, she shrugged and said, "That's life. You just gotta get over it." Her words stung, but Caleb told himself she probably didn't mean it in the way it sounded. Other moments followed. Rebecca would make offhand comments disguised as jokes, little jabs at Caleb's personality or choices. "You're way too sensitive," she said, laughing, when he brought up something that had hurt his feelings. Or, "Why do you overanalyze everything? Can't you just relax for once?" Whenever Caleb tried to address these moments, Rebecca would turn it around. "Oh, come on," she said, rolling her eyes with a playful smile. "You're reading way too much into it." She had a way of making Caleb feel like he was the problem, like his perceptions and feelings weren't valid. Caleb wanted to believe the best about her. He told himself he was overthinking, that he was just being overly cautious because of past experiences. Give her time, he thought. No one is perfect. But the unease inside him wouldn't go away. It was subtle at first, like a faint whisper in the back of his mind. But with each interaction, the whisper grew louder, turning into a voice that was harder to ignore. It wasn't just about Rebecca's dismissiveness or the way she deflected accountability. It was about the energy he felt in her presence. Something about her didn't sit right. It was as though she wore a mask, carefully constructed to keep people captivated while hiding the truth underneath. The voice within him grew more insistent. "This isn't right. Pay attention." Caleb found himself wrestling with the tension between what he wanted to believe and what he was feeling. On the surface, Rebecca still seemed like the ideal partner, charming, confident, and full of life. But beneath the surface, Caleb couldn't shake the sense that something was off. The Holy Spirit was nudging him, whispering truths that his mind couldn't fully articulate. Caleb realized he was at a crossroads. He could continue to ignore the unease, convincing himself it would pass, or he could lean into the discernment God had given him, even if it meant walking away from someone he thought could be the one. It wasn't an easy decision, but the more Caleb prayed about it, the clearer the answer became. "You've seen enough. Trust what I am showing you." Later that night, Caleb opened his Bible and found himself reading Proverbs chapter 4, verse 23. "Above all else, guard your heart, for everything you do flows from it." He realized in that moment that guarding his heart didn't mean shutting people out or becoming cynical. It meant trusting the discernment God had given him. It meant believing that the quiet voice of the Holy Spirit was enough, even if he couldn't explain it to anyone else. Have you ever been in Caleb's shoes? Have you felt that deep, undeniable sense that something wasn't right with someone, but you ignored it because you didn't have proof? It's hard, isn't it? You want to believe the best about people. You don't want to seem judgmental or overly cautious. But here's what Caleb learned and what I want to share with you. When God gives you discernment, it's not about judging someone. It's about guarding your heart. Emotional intelligence combined with the guidance of the Holy Spirit is a gift. It's God's way of saying, I see what you can't, so trust me. Caleb's story reminds us of a few important lessons. And the first one I want to share with you guys is God's wisdom is enough. That's what was ringing true to me as I was reading that story over and over. God's wisdom is enough. When you feel that nudge in your spirit, trust it. You don't need proof to believe what the Holy Spirit is revealing to you. And Romans 8, chapter 14 says, for those who are led by the Spirit of God are the children of God. If God is leading you, that is all the confirmation you need. Another point is to pay attention to the patterns. Rebecca's behavior wasn't a one-time thing. It was a pattern. Caleb realized that dismissiveness, manipulation, and lack of empathy weren't accidents. They were consistent traits. And many of us have seen this in relationships we were entangled in the past. We overlooked it, even though that voice was getting louder and louder, saying something is wrong, something is off. Okay? Matthew chapter 7, verse 16 says, by their fruit you will recognize them. So don't ignore what people consistently show you. Believe them for who they're showing you they are. Another lesson is this one I think is so important. This is one I've been meditating on for quite some time. And God's still working with me to learn to guard my own heart and to be okay with doing that quickly. To know that that feeling that I get on the inside doesn't need evidence for me to act. Okay, so guard your own heart. Proverbs chapter 4, verse 23 is clear. Protecting your heart is essential. This doesn't mean shutting people out, but it does mean being intentional about who you let in. Setting boundaries is not selfish. It is wise. One of the most wise and protective self-preserving decisions you can make. When the Bible tells you to love your neighbor as you love yourself, to me, I translate that as in, I have boundaries. I am firm and consistent with my boundaries. When I uphold boundaries for myself, I'm loving myself. Therefore, I can love other people better and safer. I make a safe situation for us all. And so guard your heart. That is so important. Here's the last lesson. Pray for clarity. James chapter 1 verse 5 reminds us, if any of you lacks wisdom, you should ask God, who gives generously to all without finding fault, and it will be given to you. Caleb didn't rely on his instincts alone. He brought his concerns to God in prayer, and God gave him the clarity that he needed. Caleb made the hard decision to step back from Rebecca, even though it wasn't easy. He realized that trusting the Holy Spirit's guidance wasn't just about avoiding harm. It was about walking in obedience to God and honoring the gift of discernment. If you're feeling that nudge today, let this be your reminder. God has given you emotional intelligence and wisdom for a reason. Trust it. Pay attention to the patterns. Pray for clarity. And above all else, guard your heart. Proverbs chapter 2, verse 11 says, "Discretion will guard you. Trust the quiet voice within. It will never lead you astray." I want to thank you guys again for spending time with me today. If Caleb's story resonated with you, please share it with someone else. Let's remind each other that we're not alone in navigating these challenges and that God's wisdom is always more than enough. Until next time, stay discerning, stay strong, and stay north of the fray. Goodbye.